Now, who doesn't love an election? The media loves them, of course, but so many commentators and journalists get them wrong. I've got to say, 8 months out from the Victorian election, I thought Daniel Andrews was done, although closer to the election, his supremacy was very clear. But most journalists lean to the Liberal left, and most of them missed the rise of Donald Trump, and most in this country didn't see the coalition having any chance in this year's federal election. Last week's British election was a lot easier. The polling had been clear for a long while, the issues and choices were stark, and it should have been pretty simple to pick, unless wishful thinking got in the way.
Well, it is an Eton mess called by these old Etonians. And it's a misnomer to think of them as conservatives conserving anything. They're like anarchists, they're thugs, they're ripping up everything and destroying the country. I mean, we know that Boris lied so much with the Boris bus and all that kind of thing.
Boris Johnson need only lose 7 seats and he's lost the election. So this is a government that's already on a knife edge. They're heading into a highly unpredictable election with a highly volatile electorate and a fractured and unpredictable electorate.
I mean, your daughter is a Labor councillor.
She is, yes.
In Camden, and she worked for Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah. He's a very, very decent man. I mean, I don't think he's the most passionate leader so far, but he is a very decent and honourable person, and you could trust him. I mean, that's why young people voted for him, because he's never actually told them a lie.
Back in July, the Sydney Morning Herald's Peter Fitzsimons visited London and gave us the benefit of his penetrating on-the-ground insights. Can Boris Johnson also solve the intractable problem of Brexit and come up with a solution that the whole country will get behind with the blessing of the European Union, Fitzsimons asked? It simply will not happen. This bloke really is the kiss of death, isn't he? He's gotten everything wrong this year. He might need to pull that bandana down and use it as a gag for his own good. Still, flying this way around the same time was former UK Labor advisor Alastair Campbell, and he had a similar outlook.
No deal, an election which I don't think will produce a result, because at the moment I think the country is fed up with both main parties and wants to punish them for the mess that we're in. If we had another referendum, I am absolutely convinced, for all the lies, for all the propaganda that will get pumped out, Remain will win, because there's a silent majority in Britain that is feeling exactly as I feel now. Nobody voted for this mess. Nobody voted to be a global laughingstock. Nobody voted for this clown to be Prime Minister, and the country's had enough of it.
Well, they have now. They certainly have now voted for that man. The writer and activist and ABC favourite Jane Caro tweeted Campbell adoringly the previous day back in July. I've admired your reading your memoir, since reading your memoir. It's so important we stop minimising what Trump, Brexit, Johnson et al. Are doing to our democracies, and refreshing to hear you call it out so unambiguously. Yes, I mean, what would the actual voters know about this stuff, eh? And there were others who didn't think Boris Johnson would be a number 10 long enough even to warm the Chesterfields.
And cue a possible October 15 snap election where Bojo could get the old heave-ho and become the shortest-term UK PM in British history.
And a similar assessment came from Waleed Ali's Sydney Morning Herald colleague.
This is chaos writ large. And what we saw last night was Boris Johnson failing spectacularly, that you had one job kind of thing. He has no control over this parliament.
Oh, but he controls it now. And even seasoned political observers, though, seemed reluctant to accept that the majority of British voters actually wanted to get on with Brexit.
You know, I feel really sorry for the people of Britain, because, you know, there's no clear end in sight.
No, and an election won't resolve this. So what you can see happening is that no one will have a majority in the next parliament, because Jeremy Corbyn can't make up his mind what he wants to do.
Well, an election has resolved this, and after a crushing defeat, one thing that matters is whether the losers offer their consent, allowing democracy to function properly, and whether they learn any lessons. And the signs from Britain so far are not good.
So to those who feel disheartened and feel like giving up, I say stay and fight for a better society. And to those who haven't yet joined us, join the Labour Party today. Be part of the resistance to Boris Johnson and the politics of fear. This starts now.
Yep, the fight, the resistance. We've already seen that resistance on the streets of London, but in other places, like back here at the ABC, things are a little bit more melancholy. ABC host Jonathan Green tweeted, "This is the disconnect. The modern caste of politicians gets elected by and large through an assiduous avoidance of issues. The world, meanwhile, is nothing but issues. Existential, monumental, intractable. What is to be done?" Jonathan, Boris won on issues. Corbyn lost on issues. What's Green's issue? And what is to be done? Well, Britain will leave the EU to start with, you know, like voters said they should 3 years ago. The media political class has had a very bad run. And in 2020, they face the prospect of a US election with Donald Trump trying for re-election. On current form, you'd expect most of the media to write him off again too.